You are listening to the Ex-Girlfriend Tattoo Podcast.
Howdy, I'm Austin Larson. This is the Ex-Girlfriend Tattoo Podcast. I'm joined by my guest today, Lucy Keogh.
Hi, how you doing today, Austin?
Oh, doing well, Lucy. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic, doing good.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for appearing on the show. Let's see, the last episode was the Valentine's Day episode. That one, that's been up for almost 2 weeks now. It's the most downloaded episode of the program so far. I feel like people really enjoyed it, been very receptive. How are you liking the show so far?
I'm loving it. You know, it's pretty great. Cam actually introduced me to it not long ago, so it was really kind of cool to kind of catch up and kind of listen to a little bit of it. It's got a fun feel to it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Glad you're enjoying the program. So, Lucy, how long have you been tattooing professionally?
I've been professionally tattooing now for 12 years. I actually officially got my first license in 2008.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's old school.
Yeah. I actually started my apprenticeship in like 2006, I think it was. I was actually pretty young. The place I got a job at, I kind of lied to them about my age.
I'm over 18, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. I had money and they didn't ask a lot of questions, so.
Wow, okay. And then you said that was professionally. Were you tattooing before that? Or?
No, actually, I had never really done anything with tattooing before I had got my apprenticeship in a shop.
What were you doing before tattoos?
Actually, before I was doing tattoos, I was actually just kind of moving around a lot. I left home at 13 and kind of just did my own thing from that point on. I actually hitchhiked across the U.S. at one point, between 13 and 15-ish, I think it was, you know? And actually in Montana, where I got the apprenticeship, is where I ended up landing, lied to a guy about getting a tattoo, and he asked me to work for him, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's how you got involved in the industry, was just kind of by chance?
Yeah, actually totally by luck. It was something that just a random happening, kind of like a meant-to-be thing, I guess.
Wow. That's fate right there. Oh, wow.
Right.
Okay. Once that happened, how did, the friends and the family that you were in contact with, that type of thing, how did the people in your life react to that?
Most of my friends were very supportive. They thought it was really kind of cool, you know, especially since, honestly, not really many of anybody I knew really thought any of us was going to do anything with our lives.
Oh, wow.
So they were really supportive. Most of my family didn't find out till a little bit later on, actually. It was, I'd say, right about when I finished up my apprenticeship, about 18 months after I first started, that they kind of got on board there. Most of them were okay with it. A lot of my extended family, especially the ones from Florida, not so much okay with it.
Oh, a little more conservative?
Yeah, more conservative, a little bit religious overall, so like tattooing wasn't quite something they were used to.
All right, and then I guess jumping right into tattooing now, since you've been at it for a dozen years. Wow.
Right?
So,
I know, kind of shocking
Yeah,
sometimes.
because you are very young to have a dozen years of tattooing under your belt. So do you have a preference of rotary over coil, coil over rotary? I guess in general, not as a rule.
I tend to prefer a little bit more of the rotary because I like the pin style machines in comparison to some of the classic coil machines due to the usage and kind of the angle you hold them at. I do a lot of fine line detail stuff, so having the smaller pin rotary really fits my style well. I used coil for probably the first 8 years of my career. It actually wasn't until recently, last 4 or 5, I switched to the rotaries.
Okay, and I feel like those are relatively newer. So.
Yeah, you know, rotaries were actually a pretty old invention. They were actually patented way back in the, if I remember correctly, the 50s or 60s.
Really? Oh,
Initially,
wow.
yeah. The coil machines, though, were much cheaper and easier to kind of make overall because they don't have tiny little bearings and little motors. So to make those and produce them for the average artist was a little bit easier, so they gained a lot more popularity initially. In recent years, with more technological advancements, the rotaries have definitely came real strong comeback, and it's probably one of the more used machines you'll see in the industry these days.
The rotaries are?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow. Okay, wouldn't have expected that. What would you say your favorite style to tattoo right now is?
Honestly, you know, as far as the style goes, it's hard to say. I love anything in color, but I'd say anything, like a nouveau to realism. That kind of range is what I prefer most of all, and what I do the most of.
All right, and would you say that that's your favorite style to paint on canvas as well, or not so much?
No, actually, oddly enough, my favorite kind of style in painting or art is more of kind of like a comic book illustrative kind of style, or like caricature style work, cartoony stuff, and things like that, actually.
Ooh, okay.
I do a little bit of the realism with painting, but honestly, most of that is for tattooing.
Hey, there you go. Very well versed, a wide variety. That's awesome.
Traveling as much as I have with tattooing, I kind of had to pick up a lot of skills to kind of work in different states.
Okay, just curious, and this wasn't really on the, I guess, the outline, but I hadn't realized that you had traveled as much professionally. How many states have you tattooed in?
Let's see here. So, let's see, Montana, here in Washington, Florida, North Carolina, Utah, Arizona. So 5 or 6? Is that
Yeah,
six?
six.
Right
Wow.
there. Yep.
Wow. Okay. Very nice. Kind of switching gears here. Are there any designs over the years, that type of thing, that you've refused to tattoo?
Yes, actually there is. There's a couple of clients, very rare though. It's not often in the shops I've worked in you get that kind of stuff. But some people come in for racial slurs or more gang-affiliated things. There was somebody one time wanted to come in and get like some Latin Kings logo stuff. Definitely not something I wanted to get involved with. And then, when I was in Florida, actually, I ran into the most of it. There was actually quite a few...
God, what a Florida thing.
Yeah, I know, right? Florida man. So, and I actually did a lot of cover-up work on those kinds of things as well there. I had to turn down, I think, 2 or 3 clients there for particular style work that just wasn't very neutral. It was kind of more aggressive style.
Okay, and going off of that, have you ever tattooed someone's face?
Actually, I've tattooed a couple of faces. Nothing too big or fancy, actually. I've done some words, a couple of stars. I've done quite a few cheek lines, or the jaw line, should I say, kind of thing. When I was in Arizona, there was quite a few of those that came in where they get the nice fancy script coming across the jaw.
Oh, okay. I've seen those.
But other than that, no, not a whole lot. I'd say 4 or 5 people. Kind of, for me especially, kind of rare.
Okay, yeah, and then definitely, these people all heavily tattooed prior to a face tattoo, right?
Yes. All of them actually had quite a lot of work overall. The face was kind of more of their last resorts and smaller kind of things. One guy did scars on his face, and I thought that one was kind of funny.
Okay, no, I like that. Opposite direction. How about genitals? You ever tattooed any genitals?
A couple of them. I'd say 2 or 3.
Okay.
Well, 2 actually. Yeah, 2. There was a lady once that we did some butterfly wings, and that's actually kind of a funny story on that one. A little in depth, but she wanted that to run around so she could go show people her butterfly guts.
Oh my God, that is awesome.
It was a pretty she was a very interesting character.
You'd have to be.
Very, very colorful and things like that, Pretty fun, not so much, I don't know, it was kind of weird at first, but now it's a good story.
No, I feel that. I guess I've only had one experience, a true genital tattoo. It was a girl that I dated once, and it was
right.
and then, and then I guess I've seen a couple, not right there, but like right on the hip around.
Oh yeah, kind of like the bikini line area and stuff like that. I've done quite a few of those. There's quite a lot of those girls will get little filigree or flowers or dainty little cute things, elegant stuff to kind of draw attention per se.
Like a little border.
Yeah, exactly.
Border for the box. It's,
little motif to frame it.
Okay. Given that tattoos are now more popular than ever, traditionally tattoos on the throat, neck, face, hands, knuckles, all the very hard to cover, super visible spots referred to as career killers. Would you say that these days in the 21st century, 2020, are career killers as much of a guarantee rather than a threat?
I would say it's definitely not as much as it used to be, There's a lot more acceptance around visible tattoos for sure, due to the prominence of how many people have them. These days it's definitely more about the subject matter than anything, but in certain industries I would still say it's a very big no, where you're dealing with higher end business retail or corporate kind of style stuff, it definitely, I still think, has a big restriction to it. Although I have tattooed several nurses and doctors that had visible tattoos, and they said it wasn't a hindrance on them, but mainly because of the particular hospitals they worked with. Other ones have vocalized to me that their hospital or wherever they're employed at has a very strict no visibility policy on those things. So I'd say it's about a 70-30, It's not so much where it's a definite for sure, but it still holds a pretty heavy weight with restrictions, I would say.
Okay, thank you. Wow, I guess I never even thought of, on a hospital-to-hospital basis.
Yeah, there was one guy I worked with, actually, he was one of our piercers, and he was a phlebotomist at a hospital.
Oh, okay.
And actually, he was, had worked there almost full-time before he started piercing and was kind of weaning that off. And that hospital was very lenient with him for his hand tattoos and everything else, but actually made him cover his neck tattoos up. He actually went to a different hospital, and they allowed the neck tattoos, but didn't like the hand ones.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. So that was a little bit of an inside info on that one in particular. The other info I've gotten from that was from nurses. Like I said, female nurses I've worked with. There was actually some I did the other day where we did them on their wrists, specifically so they could cover them with jewelry so their work wouldn't have a problem with it because you weren't supposed to have them.
Oh, okay, I see that. I knew a guy back when I was in college that he wore a dress shirt to an appointment to go get a tattoo measured just to make sure it'd be right under the cuff so he could.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly. Military has a similar kind of thing. They want to keep things below cuffs and shirt lines, so when they're in fatigue and stuff like that in formation, there's nothing kind of popping out or being too distracting.
Okay, so I guess for someone who didn't have a so-called career killer at this point, went to you to try to make an appointment to get something, what advice would you give them before doing it?
It kind of depends on their age. If they're a bit younger, I'll definitely kind of recommend against it and tell them maybe you should give it some time. If they're a bit older and they seem like they're, pretty solid in their life choices, then I'll be like, hey, this is what you want, I'll do it for you. But really, most people are well enough informed about kind of the implications of being tattooed in those areas that usually you don't get people that don't kind of understand what they're getting themselves into asking for it. A lot of first-timers or younger people are kind of more cautious about it, except for hands. Those tend to be really popular these days, little tidbits and stuff like that,
Okay, yeah, no, I've seen a lot of, I've seen a lot of bad hand tattoos.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
But even then, I don't know, I feel like if I were to go ahead and tattoo the palm or the backside of the hand, I'd want to get something big that covers most of it. I wouldn't, get something just...
Yeah, honestly, that's kind of from an artistic point of view, that's always the most effective way to kind of get a tattoo. It gives a good presence, has a nice fit and flow. But these days, there's actually a very big movement for what they call ignorant tattoos, which is gaining a lot of traction within the last couple of years. And it's specifically designed around being very simple, very rudimentary style tattoos. No shading, just black, heavy lines, and honestly, kind of more towards the poorly done side.
Okay. Ooh, all right. So what advice would you give to someone before getting a genital tattoo?
Something like that, make sure you're going to be very cautious about aftercare because in that area, the clothing and friction rubbing and also temptation to pull it out and show it off and things can be pretty strong. Plus also mainly clothing. It's a very high friction area depending on what your attire is. So be careful there. Definitely plan it out to have time off or where you can wear appropriate clothing so you're not going to have an issue. Also, you're going to have to abstain from intercourse for at least 7 to 8 days, for the most part, if not a little bit longer, just to make sure there's no contamination issues.
Well, for my audience, that really shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah,
so.
Right?
Okay, so as an industry standard, are tattoo artists independent contractors? I guess in the sense that you work out of a shop, but you're not necessarily employed by the shop?
Yeah, technically speaking, that's kind of the standard overall. You'd be kind of considered like a 1099 or a subcontractor.
Okay.
You kind of just make an agreement with the shop to kind of give a certain amount of money for a certain amount of services, and then kind of run from there. Some shops do run it as an employee basis, to where they give you a whole W-2 and everything like that, and give you a paycheck and all those kinds of things.
Oh, okay.
But that's not as common. But in some places, it is becoming more common due to population. There's just so many more people and so many more artists. It's taken on a little bit more of a business professionalism compared to the more old school freelance feel that it used to have.
And yeah, you said that you do know of some exceptions there. So I, like a lot of Americans, I'm currently waiting on a tax refund. So just from that perspective, for someone who isn't getting a W-2 or a paycheck through a shop, how do taxes work?
For us, if you kind of file under self-employed is usually the way you do it. It can happen in a couple different ranges depending on what your income is. If you're in a certain bracket, you file for basically just, like I said, self-employment. It's just your own business entity. You just put your own name and everything like that, Some people do run it to where they run like with the shop, and the shop will claim them as like a specific 1099, so they'll file their taxes in joint with the shop. A lot of people don't really do it that way most of the time. Most of it's all just independent. You file your own taxes under your own name, and you always owe taxes. You always have to pay.
Oh,
yeah,
that's no bueno.
It's one of those things where when you're employed, your employer pays half of your Social Security and unemployment and your benefits. Well, when you're self-employed, you have to pay the full amount. So you're always having to pay out of that. And a lot of times, they make you pay quarterlies. So it's pretty specific on, they know exactly how much you're making. So the amount they're charging you is pretty right on. You never end up paying very much over what you actually have to.
Wow, I did not know. Huh, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty convenient in some ways, inconvenient in others, just because you never get anything back.
All right, so kind of going off of that, since a lot of people are going to be getting tattoos with a refund, that type of thing, is there a standard you found in the industry for how you're supposed to tip a tattoo artist, whether it be by the, I guess, the price paid, the price quoted, the design, length, anything like that?
No, not really. I can't say there's a standard. Most people do tip, though. On average, it's usually a smaller amount, Tourists tend to be the biggest tippers. Overall, I've noticed, tends to be, I don't know why, but some people, they tend to be more lenient with tipping the longer they come to you. After you do several tattoos, they start to kind of appreciate the consistency. But no standard. It's just kind of based on how happy you are with the product. Although there was a client I had that told me he tipped a guy even though he hated his tattoo.
Really?
And I never understood it. I tried asking him, I was like, well, why did you do it? And he was kind of explaining it to me. He's like, well, I felt obligated thinking I had to. And I want to tell everybody, you don't have to tip. Only tip if you like the work and you appreciate what the artist is doing. Otherwise, it's like food service. If it was really poor, there's no reason to show gratification.
Totally, I completely understand that. So in your experience, has it ever been tipped without cash?
Yes, actually I have. Depending on the range, some people have given me gifts. Actually, I have quite the collection of memorabilia for like Zelda stuff and masks and a couple pieces of art and a whole collection of comic books that were actually tipped to me from some clients, which was really the comic books. Oh my God. Amazing. It's a whole tote worth of them, hundreds. It was really cool. I have had other clients offer physical or sexual tips. That's not something I've ever practiced, although some artists do. Not something I condone. I tend to be, it's a business, It's a business. It's degrading to the old professionalism of the industry and even to yourself, I think, in a little bit of a way,
Yeah, no, definitely.
Although I have nothing wrong with sex work or anything like that.
Oh, yeah, no, completely.
Just that's a different kind of aspect, in my personal opinion.
I totally get what you're saying, I mean, it's like, as an artist, this is, that's not going to pay my rent. This is what I do for a living. This is,
100%.
Now, I mean, granted, I guess I've had appointments to touch up tattoos where the artist doesn't charge me anything, but I'll still bring in, like a 6-pack or something.
Oh, yeah, yeah, so that's definitely something, too. A lot of people bring a little gratuity for a touch-up and things like that, even though it's not required, which we always appreciate.
All right, and then I guess while we're on the subject, how about barter? Anyone try to barter you to get out of paying outright?
Yeah, for sure. I have actually bartered on quite a few occasions.
Oh, okay.
If people have something that they think has worth value, they're definitely more than welcome to bring it up and kind of offer. I've traded everything from tattoo equipment to household items to even an RV one time.
An RV?
Yeah,
oh,
I sure
wow.
did. It was had a buddy that was looking for an RV. Had someone come in. They had $400 they couldn't make up for a tattoo that they wanted to get. And I asked them if they had anything, and they said they had this old RV. So I knew my buddy was looking for one. I was like, sure, trade it over. Trade it for an RV and then sold it to my buddy. But yeah, it was kind of funny, actually.
Wow, that's really cool. There you go. Everyone got what they wanted, so
yeah, exactly.
Hey, make it happen. So what do you think the biggest misconception that the general public has about tattoo artists and the tattoo industry?
That's a tough one. There's a lot of stereotypes about tattoo artists, I'd say one of the biggest ones I've ran into myself is that all tattoo artists are these just crazy party animals. There's definitely a lot of tattoo artists that have a big extracurricular nightlife, But for a lot of artists, especially for myself and other ones I've worked with that really are very kind of into the industry and the art form, we spend a lot of time doing this. I'll spend anywhere from 3 to 4 to sometimes 12, 13 hours working on tattoo designs just for one client, and then I'm doing my personal art, which some of my paintings will take, 25, 30 hours or a month or two, depending if I'm lazy. So, when you're really into it, we're actually pretty mellow people. We're just kind of regular, just normal for the most part, besides our extra flair. So I'd say that's the biggest one I've run into. People tend to think we're all just this rock star kind of thing, and a lot of us know we spend a lot of time with our art.
Do you ever have to deal with clients that think they know more about tattooing than you?
Yeah, quite a few of them tend to have a pretty high sense of their, well, mainly due to the shows, Ink Master and some of the TV shows they have. You'll get clients that'll watch those, and then they'll have this kind of idea that they're like, oh, well, I saw this or that. Well, it's not really the same. Those shows are dramatized, but not often. Every now and then you'll get those. Some of them, usually when they do think they know more, they really think they know more. So that's unfortunate, but a lot of times you can quickly kind of show them they don't, as far as like, just calmly and politely just be like, oh, well, and shows tend to dramatize things, tell them some of those kinds of things, and then when they see you doing stuff, they're like, oh, wow, there's a lot going on, and that tends to kind of put them a little bit more reservation.
Totally. No, I feel like a lot of those shows, they show a lot of drama, but not a whole lot of art,
Yeah, they don't show a lot of the technical process, and like sometimes even with the judging and the critiquing, they'll be a little bit more biased to kind of what they're looking for, what sells, what's more trendy overall.
Oh,
so that kind of, I think, takes away from some of the genuine artistry of it.
All right, and then kind of while we're on that subject, so you have any stories about the worst clients you've had?
Yeah, some people, they're very dramatic. They're always stopping or moving or looking, There was one client that I had, in particular, she was probably one of my worst, as far as just being a pain to work with. Wouldn't listen, wouldn't sit still. We did this small, maybe 50-cent size wing on her, and I kid you not, it took almost 3 hours.
Shit, seriously?
Yes. She was full on crying, like snotty, nosy, bubble blowing, crying, like, at several points, I was like, we should stop. And she was just, no, we have to finish. You're gonna, like, and I was pretty new to tattooing at this point, So I didn't really just was like, nah, you're just being too much. We need to stop. And she actually paid me by the hour for that. It ended up costing her $350.
Oh my God.
Yeah, well, I don't think she was paying for it. I think she was making her boyfriend.
So
it was one of those where, and he was just super quiet, so I'm not really sure. But he paid, so I'm pretty sure it was his money. But man, it was terrible. The only other client that I'd say would be my worst one was a particular lady that was very, very handsy.
Oh.
Yeah. She was kind of funny because I knew she was going to be fun. The minute she walked in the shop, she was kind of a pretty hefty gal. And she was just very inappropriately dressed, for anywhere. It was terrible.
You left the house that way.
Yeah, pretty much like didn't even put all the clothes on kind of thing, And she had this big tattoo across the side of her neck that said Rick's bitch.
Oh my God.
It was pretty intense. And we were doing some touch-up work on her arm. And, she must have tried to grope me like 3 or 4 times. And at one point, she was like talking to one of the other artists. And he had seen her try to grope me at one point. Into which, we kind of had a little bit of a conversation. And he was like, hey, you got to keep your hands above the covers. And right after being reprimanded for doing that, she turns around to him after he says, keep your hands above the covers, trying to be nice. And she's like, I'll put my hands under your covers.
Oh my God.
So it was a bit, it was kind of an awkward situation. It was terrible, it just very creepy.
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, that's not something that anyone should have to deal with, but especially
kind of
at their place of work.
That's... And then to kick it all off, actually, speaking of tips, as she was leaving, she's all going out, and she's like, well, do you boys take tips, or do we go in the back for that?
Wow.
Yeah, it was...
No means no, lady.
Right? She was a pretty fun client.
Oh my God. Oh, wow. Okay, so totally switching gears here after that. Growing up, would you say that you were raised around the tattoo culture / tattoo industry?
Not really, no. I had some very older siblings because I come from a really big family.
Okay.
And they had some tattoos, but it was very, very frowned upon by my parents and their kind of social circle. They were more very old school traditionalists, so tattooing was not something that was encouraged or endorsed in any way, shape, or form by my family. And actually, my older brothers that had gotten the tattoos were kind of distanced a little bit because of it in some aspects,
like they were kind of the black sheep of the family?
Yeah, they were kind of being like, oh, it's, kind of more, we just ruined a lot of chances in life for yourself. Even though they were hidden, and they couldn't technically see them, it was more of a just, a big mistake, kind of like, dumb kids kind of thing, And actually, when I was younger, I used to draw on my siblings quite a lot with markers and things.
Yeah, okay.
Got terribly reprimanded and punished for it. Ironically enough, look at me now.
Hey, right? It's from an early age, you knew.
Yeah, Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. So how old were you when you received your first tattoo?
When I got my first tattoo, I would say I think I was barely 16. Just turning 16, maybe. Yeah, I would say maybe a month or so before my 16th birthday.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
What was that tattoo?
It's actually tattooed. It's some lettering on my back. And it actually goes from shoulder to shoulder. And it's actually pretty big lettering. It says, "Where the fuck is the magic?"
Yes. Oh my god. Wow. Okay. For the tattoos that teenagers get, no, that's actually pretty. I still like that. That's fucking cool.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it, actually. Mainly because, like, a lot of my life, people are always like, "Oh, find the magic, and there's magic, and this and that," and leave it home at 13. Like, things were a little rough. So I just thought it was kind of like that ironic, sarcastic kind of, quip little thing, at a young age. It's still aged well, though, I think. I still enjoy it to this day.
Definitely. I still haven't found the fucking magic.
Yeah, me neither entirely, I'm still looking.
Okay, and then just curious, because you were underage at that point, was that like a stick and poke? Was that done?
No, it was actually done at the shop I initially started working at. Yeah, there was a tattoo shop, and I went in, and I told them that I was 18. I had money in hand, had cash in hand, and they just didn't really ask for an ID or anything.
Hey, I mean,
And so I was just, like... It was in Montana. It was pretty rural, everything like that, so I don't think there was a lot of... Even to this day with parental consent in Montana, I'm pretty sure the legal age is like 14.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, it's actually pretty young. You wouldn't think
that
it
is
overall.
super crazy.
Yeah. But, they tend to be a little bit more open with, parental rights and stuff like that. So as long as a parent signs, then... they're okay with it.
Okay. I guess now I didn't even really think of that, but you as a professional, even with the parental consent, I mean, have you tattooed like 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds?
No, I've tattooed a 15-year-old actually one time with parental consent.
I mean, by that age though, you're old enough to drive a car, you're old enough
Yeah,
to,
most of it's pretty okay. I usually actually have a little bit of an interview process with the younger ones and their parents when they do that. I usually ask the parents, kind of how their kid is doing, how they're doing in school and things like that, and if they're not doing super awesome, then I actually will kind of turn them down. If the parents kind of vocalize that their kid's doing really well, then I'll be like, okay, let's go ahead with this. And then I'm pretty picky about subject matter, I'm not gonna lie. The couple I have done on underage kids were generally memorials for parents or deaths in the family and things like that, something that I felt you're not really gonna kind of regret that kind of thing. Other ones were tattoos that they got with their parents, mother, daughter, father, son kind of thing. So I was like, well, that's, there's nothing wrong with that, Although in most states I've worked in the recent years, they're all you have to be 18 to get tattooed. So I haven't actually tattooed someone underage in probably 4 or 5 years, to be honest.
Going back to growing up, before you left home, would you say that you were considered artistic?
Yeah, a little bit. I would say so. I dabbled in art and this and things. I was definitely encouraged a bit for artistic endeavors. Not like real heavily, but it wasn't like it was frowned upon, except for the drawing on my siblings.
Aside from that,
Yeah,
it was
right.
moved to the paper, the canvas.
Exactly.
But, all right. So, did you ever have a feeling growing up that art is something you'd be pursuing professionally?
Oh gosh, no.
No. Okay.
Honestly, I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. When I was younger, I was pretty much directionless. Came from a very odd-styled family. So their whole ideology about life had nothing to do with secular society. So by the time I got involved in things, I was clueless. I was just kind of having fun, really.
There you go.
Just kind of living. So it was kind of a weird thing, that when tattooing found me, it kind of almost felt meant to be. Not to say I believe in preordained destiny, but it definitely kind of felt right overall. And it's treated me amazing. It kind of saved my life in certain ranges, because I don't know what I would have ended up doing if I didn't, Had no educational options, really, so...
Wow. All right. Since we've spoken earlier on career killers, you do have a rather prominent facial tattoo. I guess two of them. One that goes down vertically onto your
one
neck,
that goes from my lip
chest,
all the way down to my collarbones on my chest.
and then another one going horizontally across the. Okay.
Yeah, from tragus to tragus, across my face.
All right. So, how bad did that hurt compared to other areas of your body?
I would say the first one I got was on my chin and throat, as far as the face stuff. And that one wasn't as painful as you might think. It was actually just really kind of weird, mainly due to the fact that, the vibrations on your throat and esophagus, it kind of makes you feel like you want to kind of laugh, because it kind of tickles, but at the same time it makes you want to kind of throw up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was really kind of an odd sensation.
Sounds like when I see live.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it's kind of like that mixed emotion where you're just like, I don't know what to do here. And also your head's, well, my head was hanging off of the bench, so my head was kind of upside down. So if the blood rushed into your head, that was more the biggest issue for me. It took about 5.5 hours. I was happy when it was done.
And then the tracheus to tracheus one, was that a little more intense?
That
less
one was
intense?
definitely a bit more intense. Although, oddly enough, a lot of that one actually tickles. Oh my God, does it tickle? So, like, from right about the center of your eye, coming across, the way that it vibrates on the cartilage in your nose and the mucous membrane on the inside of your nose, I mean, I kid you not, it feels like someone's got a feather in your nose. So you're just like, I mean, it's bad. I was actually, at one point when they were doing it, they were taking a video, and I was sitting there kind of laughing a little bit, and they were like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, it tickles.
Oh my God.
But once you hit the cheekbone and the side of the head going to the tracheus, it's like fire. It just, I mean, right there up to the tracheus. It was definitely make you sweat. But not the worst. I've definitely have other more and more painful tattoos than that one.
All right. And then just because the facial tattoos are so prominent, have you ever gotten unsolicited advice just from people seeing those?
Oh, God, yes. Okay, yeah, so I got these done when I was really young, actually. I got my throat done when I was 18.
Oh, wow.
I got my face done probably, I think I was 20, maybe 21.
God. Like,
yeah.
barely old enough to drink.
Barely old,
wow.
yeah.
But, I mean, you're not going to get carded with a fucking face tattoo. So
Actually, I get carded everywhere.
Really?
Mm-hmm, every time. It's actually, okay, so at first I was confused. I thought the same thing. I think the reason being is people want to see how old I am. Like, how old's the face tattooed person? So they want to see my ID just to be like, see, because I don't think I look my age, technically speaking. And a lot of people say I look younger than I am.
You do look younger.
Yeah,
so
I
mean,
I think I'm aging okay, thankfully, especially through my earlier life. So yeah, actually I get carded. I can't say I haven't been carded almost anywhere.
Okay.
Unless I go there regularly.
And
Usually
then,
once they card me the first time, everybody remembers me. It's a hard face to forget.
all right. Oh, there you go. A double-edged sword right
exactly.
there.
That was part of why I did it, actually, was actually for business.
Well, you never forget that face.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's you stick out in the crowd, definitely. And then I guess outside of the face tattoo, but also inclusive of it, have you ever received prejudice because of your ink, just because of your ink?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. In quite a few places, I would say some people, they'll be cautious or, they'll kind of take a little distance to step away. Because, I got quite a few tattoos. There's quite a lot of them. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Some people are a little bit more biased where they kind of keep their distance. Other people are very, very friendly. Like just the other day, there was an old lady. She must have been at least in her late 70s. And she kind of stopped me at the doorway at the grocery store. And she said, "Oh my God, you're the most beautiful piece of art I've ever seen." And I thought that was awesome. Made me feel great, So on that side, not very often vocally. You'll see where people will sometimes, move away from you. So a little bit there. But actually, when I first got it done and I was a little younger, was when I noticed the most kind of where people would speak out about it, These days, though, I don't know, not very much. It's a lot less in the last, I'd say, 4 or 5 years where people will be like, oh, hey, what the heck, Although 2 weeks ago at Costco, I did have an older gentleman that was less than polite about my whole aesthetic.
Wow.
Yeah. Mainly more just kind of, how that, like, some people come up and they'll, like, pretend to be confused in kind of, like, a condescending manner,
Yes,
where they come
actually.
up and they're just like, oh, what's up with that get up kind of thing, And you're like, get out of here,
And I'm like, what the fuck are you wearing, dude? That's...
Well, exactly, because it's just like, he was very unkempt kind of thing, Definitely could look like, maybe could use a shower kind of thing, And you're like... Actually, I did say this to him. I was like, because he asked me what I was supposed to be. And so instead of, being polite, I was like, well, what the hell are you supposed to be? And that kind of, it didn't help the situation. So he got a little bit, pissy about it. And, I started saying this and that. And I just kind of walked off. I honestly try to avoid most conflict with those kinds of things just because of, some people can get aggressive a little too fast. I did have one instance where someone tried to pull a firearm on me because of that whole situation.
Wait, what?
Yeah, actually, it was kind of crazy. So there was an older person that had ran into me. It was at a shop that I had worked at. And I was outside, and they saw me, and were kind of being condescending. They were an older, they kind of was saying, oh, you probably don't have employment, and how do you tend to afford anything, and just kind of being snide.
Just being jackasses. jackasses.
Yeah, just being rude for no good reason. And they don't even knew that I actually worked within the building into which their wife was being tattooed at.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of a fun story. So then I go inside, and he's asking the other artist, which is tattooing his wife, he wants to get a tattoo. So that artist directs him to me. Yes. So this is where it gets interesting. So he's already kind of got this condescending attitude, sees that I'm supposed to be an artist to work with him, and then kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like, well, okay, do this for me. I was a little bit kind of annoyed, and honestly, I was like,
You have
well,
the right
I
to be.
don't really want to tattoo you, you know? And beside that, from a professional point of view, what he wanted wasn't really possible. He wanted a very small portrait of a dog on a forearm, and it just needed to be bigger, and he wouldn't do it bigger, so I told him no. So he proceeded to get very upset, storms out. A couple moments later, one of the other artists of the shop comes in, and he's like, hey, there's an old guy out there just cursing up, saying that he's going to shoot you. And I'm like, what? And I was like, well, and so I was like, well, he's outside the building, we're okay, not a big deal, whatever. He comes back in the building, so I kind of was a little freaked out a little bit. I was like, oh, here we go. And he comes right up to the table, and he kind of looks at me, and he's like, hey. And so I come up to the table, I'm like, hey, you need to leave. You're not welcome here. But his wife was getting tattooed, so he had this sense of entitlement where he's like, I'm a paying customer and this and that. And I was like, no, you need to leave. And then he flips his coat back and says, you think an old man could take your head off? And at that point, it just got way out of hand. Actually, one of the other artists got involved, and then he got tackled. He gets tackled, the cops got called, big ordeal, he gets arrested.
Shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
So really it kind of spurned all off of my face tattoos.
God damn. Well, don't be a
jackass.
Just don't be a jackass.
Just don't be rude.
So people usually think of the tattoo industry as, full of people definitely with a lot of flair, very open-minded, creative. And of course, a lot of artists are, but on the other side of that coin, you will occasionally find some artists, professionals in the industry with, I guess, more of an old school mentality about a lot of things.
For sure.
Do you feel that you've ever faced prejudice or discrimination from within the tattoo industry?
In a couple of places, I would say so. Being a younger artist, and having facial tattoos early, there's actually a couple of the more older or more traditional artists that kind of looked at me like I hadn't earned my bones yet, per se. In the industry, that's a lot of things you'll find where it used to be you had to earn the right to sport certain things. It was kind of like a pecking order, per se, And at a certain kind of point, that kind of got thrown out the window, with tattoos being more acceptable. And some people definitely didn't like that, mainly because they grew up in a tattoo where they had to kind of earn things, so they felt that should be like a continued tradition. But unfortunately, a lot of traditional ideologies in the shop were more kind of like college hazing. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. They would kind of put you through the ringer just to kind of condition you or see if you could hold up, see if you were one of the cool kids or something like that, all based on very biased ideologies of whoever was teaching you. So a couple of shops I actually tried to find work at were very condescending to me about they didn't want someone that hadn't kind of earned their right to tattoo yet, and that young kids needed to learn a lesson.
How am I going to learn if you don't fucking hire me?
Yeah, exactly, mainly just because they thought I was being rude to them by tattooing my face and hands before I had reached a certain point in my career, per se, because I did it, I think, I'd only been tattooing 5 some years by the time I tattooed my face.
Would you think that,
You'd think that'd be long enough.
You would think, yeah. In a lot of fields, like if I've been a doctor for 5 years. Or,
yeah, exactly.
I've practiced law for 5 years. That's that seems like a pretty wow. So earlier on, you kind of said that, tattooing something that found you, kind of saved you. Just shot in the dark. The way your life was kind of headed before tattooing, that sort of thing. If you weren't doing tattoos right now, what do you think you'd be doing for a living?
That's a tough one to say, I'd probably be in, I don't know, some kind of administrative or thing like that, I would say, I did work for a couple of call centers and things like that in my early tattooing career overall. So I'd say something like that, like a lot of other people, I would have probably went into more entry-level corporate work or something of that nature for the most part. I did do labor when I was younger, but I've never been a fan of that. I don't really like working hard for other people.
Exactly. Might as well, work hard for yourself.
Exactly.
Be your own boss.
Mhm.
Okay. And then, so I mean, you've mentioned that you do a lot of painting outside of drawing for clients, just as your own hobby. What sort of stuff do you like doing outside of tattoos?
As far as like painting and stuff like that goes, I do a lot of digital art. That's my main platform outside of tattooing, mainly because it gives me a great ease of use and manipulability on the work. You know, some of the traditional forms are you can't mass produce or kind of manipulate them as much. So I enjoy that about digital platforms, although I do love watercolor. You know, it's one of my favorite mediums outside of tattooing and digital art.
Oh, okay. Those are awesome styles, definitely. How important would you say professionalism is in a shop? I mean, I guess striking that right balance where it's somewhere where, I mean, it feels like somewhere where art happens, somewhere where adults belong, I guess, somewhere that it doesn't feel like an office, but at the same time still feels like a business. I mean, how important is striking that balance? Or
In my opinion, very, very important. I would say with tattooing, it's kind of like dinner and a show. You know, it's a balancing act where you want entertainment, but you also want good product. You know, and some shops, they don't focus on that as far as like street shops go. It's more of like that old movie, what is it, Stepson, you know, with Pauly Shore, where they go in the shop and it's got that Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah, okay.
And he goes in there and he's like, "You pick it, I stick it." You know, in some shops it's where there's no real entertainment. It's very business-like. You come in, you have a design. The artist really doesn't do much. They just kind of, you know, it's all flash orientated. And in that instance, you know, the balance isn't as important, I don't think, because you're not there as long. The clients are just kind of looking for something and in and out kind of thing, you know. When you're in more of a studio, it's pretty much the most important thing, you know. You want to make a good impression on your clients. You want to, you know, make them feel welcome, comfortable, not like make them like you, but try and find a common ground, you know. But at the same time, making them feel comfortable that you're a professional, you know what you're doing, you're well informed, and confidence. You know, so, but some people, they go a little too professional when they get in the studio, and they kind of treat their clients more like a canvas, not so much as a person. And sometimes I've had clients that I've gotten from other artists, and they love the artist art. They were just saying like, oh, they're a little stiff, or, you know, they sit there and it was silence for 3.5 hours and it was really awkward. And so that's kind of a little too far, you know, compared to other ones. I had one client come in and they loved this other artist. It was one of their favorite artists, but they wouldn't go to him because they talk too much.
oh, wow.
Yeah, right? You're like, I guess
Damn,
the
you
little
just he'll
things
talk
do
your ear
matter.
off and-
Yeah.
Okay. You kind of talked earlier about the ignorant style of tattooing that's become very popular recently. What are some other trends that you've noticed as a professional in the past 12 years?
You know, over the years, I would say there's quite a few trends that have kind of come and gone. Recent years, some of the biggest ones would be minimalism. You know, that's also where the ignorant style spurned from. So like minimalism, sacred geometry, and like a stippling whip shading technique is actually, within the last 3 years, been very, very popular. It's a pretty quick technique to execute, so you can get a large area done much faster than you can with other techniques. So it's been very popular due to the price increase of economics, where people can get larger work in a semi-realistic, elegant style and not have to pay as much. So that was a big driving force there. The other thing is the minimalism, which is like a single line, small, just black work, daintier tattoos and stuff like that. Another reason spurned by cost effectiveness, but also because there's a large group of people that believe tattooing has become a little bit too elitist, where some artists are forgetting the authentic, organic nature of art, that it should be just a freely given expression, you know? Which I support. Unfortunately, doesn't pay bills. So, you know, some people don't strike a good balance there. Some cities, I mean, there's artists, they're charging 200 some an hour, you know, which in some people's minds is just preposterous. They think that's impossible. Why would you ever do that? And then a lot of it is more with, you know, the younger crowd and stuff like that. You know, a lot of college students and other people, they're much more financially strapped. So the ignorant style and the minimalist style is very, very appealing. Plus, some of it's really cute. Not gonna lie.
Definitely, I mean, I feel like even within every style, even if you're not a fan of that style specifically,
exactly.
I mean, you'll find a couple pieces you like. I mean, it's...
As an artist, I think you should always appreciate all forms of art, whether it be realism, abstract, minimalism, expressionism, whatever. There's all expression in it, Sure, some people might get a little bit technical about skill level. That's for different discussions, I mean, art is for expression.
I really like that, I guess it's kind of the same argument I make with people. If you don't listen to one genre of music, I'm like, have you listened to everything in that genre? I mean, yeah,
exactly.
no, it's don't. You'll find something that you can appreciate somewhere in there.
Exactly.
Don't limit yourself.
It goes back to that very old saying, "Don't judge a book by its cover." You never know what the whole thing is.
Oh, totally. Tattoo schools. I feel like these have been something that's they've become a lot more popular in the past 10 years or so. That at least that I've noticed.
Oh gosh, yes.
How do you feel about those? And I mean, just to be clear, places that not schools that teach art, that type of thing. I'm guessing for-profit institutes that exist specifically with the aim of making people think that if they pay tuition, take these classes, that they'll become a fully fledged tattoo artist at the end of 5 weeks or whatever. How do you feel about those?
With those kinds of programs, I'm in very high disagreement. I did an apprenticeship for, it was just over 18 months, so just shy of 2 years. There's a lot to the industry that's very in-depth, and there's a lot of technique to things that you have to build habits around to be able to confidently and fluently perform those techniques. Those schools do not reinforce or teach the ability to get good habit structure. So I completely disagree with them. Overall, if it was more like a college degree kind of thing where it's several years involved in, I could see more support for it. But the stance it is now, it's infeasible. You just can't teach someone everything they need to know and then have them repetitiously practice that long enough to get a good base and then put them out there to do work. It just can't happen. No one can absorb that much that fast.
Totally. And I mean, even then, it's not designed to be set up that way.
Yeah, it's not that way. It's a very personal form of expression, and you have to take a lot of time exploring yourself on formulating what that is and how you're going to go about expressing that. Because within tattooing itself, there's a multitude of techniques to achieve a good product. Just my personal style is very much different to, say, even the artist I work with, like Cam West and things like that. Just the technical application is much different. So to learn that, it takes time, and then to find which technique works for you even takes more time.
Definitely. No, I mean, like, oh man, just like that Malcolm Moore line about how the greats weren't great because they could paint at birth. The greats are great because they paint a lot.
Exactly.
Oh
I think
God,
Van Gogh pushed out over 5,000 some pieces of art in his lifetime. And I mean, that's a lot of art.
That is.
And I mean, you only see a select few of them, but for him, it was about the art, And you'll notice that with even tattoo artists. You'll notice that some of them are more about the money and the kind of getting the notoriety. Other ones you'll notice, you'll feel the art, you'll see the art, and you'll get a much more confident feel from those artists.
I've looked at a lot of portfolios where you can tell, okay, so who enjoys painting and drawing outside of getting paid for it, and who's picking up a check.
Exactly.
Because even that in itself, it makes itself known right there in the art. And I mean, even then, if you go to a shop, what do they have on the walls? Is it flash? Okay, is it flash from people in the shop? Is it just flash that you can buy from a company, Or better yet, are these paintings that are painted by the artist, drawings, that type of thing?
100%. I tell a lot of my clients, if you ever go into a tattoo shop and you don't see art from the artist in the shop, I do not recommend getting work there. Because either you're in a street shop where it's just all flash and they're just looking to sell you a product, not saying it won't be a bad product, or it might be a good product, but it's going to be a duplicate product. It's not going to be a custom product. It's not going to be a certain authentic kind of style art product, so be careful with that one. I definitely warn there.
Okay, and then I guess since we talked about tattoo schools, how about scratchers? People not advertising to have any sort of real tattoo training, but someone just buying the $60 Amazon, machine and then tattooing their buddies for like $10 to design that type of shit out of the house.
Oh, yep, the good old kitchen magicians.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually where a lot of the ignorant tattoo style, in my opinion, kind of spurns from, is people that Because there's one client I actually had that their friend came with them, and the entire session their friend was actually kind of putting him down for coming to a professional shop to get tattooed.
What?
Yeah, exactly. Because their friend had the idea that a tattoo was meant to be done by someone close to you. It was meant to have a personal, philosophical, organic meaning. And tattoos done in professional places was kind of like
Like cheating?
yeah, kind of like conforming.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like you were just kind of like a run-of-the-mill secular society sheep, kind of thing. And if you saw their tattoos, they were all stick and poke, kind of thing. And actually, that client was the first time I'd ever heard the term ignorant tattoos.
Okay.
And it kind of, in my mind, kind of correlates to like back in the punk rock days, how like there was the punk scene kind of different from the rock scene. They were similar kind of aggressive styles, and it was kind of alternative, but there was one was like, no, refinement, that's just bullshit.
Okay.
So that's kind of the whole, it's kind of like a rebellious attitude.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's a great perspective. Thank you.
And some of that stuff I don't entirely agree with. I think life is about refinement and that we should be trying to improve ourselves. So some of that rudimentary, primal, organic nature is nice and all, but, as humans, we've kind of moved past some of those kinds of things and have much better ways of establishing rebellion against establishment,
Definitely.
Especially with tattoos, they've always been kind of an anti-establishment thing. Why not give it a little bit extra, flair, per se?
Right. No, totally.
It's like that movie SLC Punk, at the very
Oh my
end
God,
of it.
yeah.
Yeah, at the very end, he shaves his head, turns kind of a little bit more, conformist.
Because that's the ultimate way to
Yeah,
rebel.
yeah, exactly, and then to me, that's always kind of my ideology. I love that movie when I was a kid. So.
Oh my God, that's still a great movie. Oh man.
I know, right? It's pretty awesome.
Seriously, it's aged well. Yeah, it's so. That being said, since you've been tattooing for a dozen years now, know everything about setup. I mean, you could probably set up a station in your sleep, that type of thing.
Oh
You've been
gosh,
so
yes.
long. Are there any circumstances where you'd ever consider tattooing at someone's home, or is that just a big no-no?
In a lot of instances, it's very frowned upon for the most part, especially from a professional point of view, Although, I'm not going to lie to you, there's not many artists that I know that haven't. And mainly a lot of times that happens for a more professional or experienced artist is during traveling.
Okay.
You'll be traveling around, you'll be kind of not having a particular shop or somewhere to go, So, you kind of have that ability to do it there. There's actually a couple people that I know that have tattoo setups at home in specific rooms. And I've actually gone there and done tattoos for them because they actually don't like social settings. And if you look at your state laws and things like that, actually from a legal point of view, in certain states, it's completely fine to tattoo out of a home as long as you meet certain requirements for cleanliness and barriers and things like that from other household living areas.
Okay.
Other states, 100% no.
Oh.
They have licensing to where you have to license a building, and that entire building has to be licensed for tattooing procedures. That's separate of the tattoo license you have to have as an artist to perform the procedure. So really, like other questions, some of it's a gray area. It's a hit and miss. Some artists are totally fine with it. Other ones are not so much. These days, it's so easy to get guest spots and to call shops, and there's real open, kind of free sharing with art and artists that it's not necessary or really well needed to ever tattoo out of someone's home. So really, it's not very common as much anymore.
All right. And then how important would you say shop hygiene is?
Of utmost the most important thing. Cleanliness, keeping your shop clean, cleaning on a very routine schedule is precipice of your aseptic technique and just overall universal precautions. You are creating open wounds in people's skin. So some people view it as that's just, it's a basic scratch. Well, I mean, it is an open wound. You're sometimes opening up very large areas of the skin, and contamination can happen. So being clean is definitely very, very important. Although it's amazing sometimes what people get away with. Sometimes the standards of cleanliness in some shops, I'm baffled that someone doesn't get an infection. And I'm just like, how did you get your license?
I've been to a couple where I just, I saw, don't get me wrong, like the big, stuff, needles were getting disposed of properly.
Oh, yeah,
there was
yeah.
an autoclave, but a lot of stuff was disposable. But a lot of the shit I saw, like the table didn't have actual plastic on it. It was just kind of getting... Clipcord covers were not a thing.
Exactly.
I don't remember if I saw the guy change his gloves or not, but it was, yeah.
It's really kind of a tough thing because there's no kind of overall standard throughout all the states. Some states regulate very heavily. Other states don't regulate at all. Like in Idaho and Arizona, there's no state regulatory board. So there's no one to come in and tell anybody you can or can't do anything. So literally, whatever they want to go, goes.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so that's kind of unfortunate in some kind of range. Not that I condone or kind of advocate heavy regulations. Like in Missouri and Arkansas and places like that, they run it much more like, I would say, hairdressing.
Oh, okay.
To where actually you have to go through a supervised 375-hour work program to where there's only certain approved shops that can give you a certificate. You have to tell the state. That shop has to file a licensing application for you. You then have to go to the shop and under supervision do 375 hours of tattoo work. Now that's kind of hard to do because you can only get, several hours a day. So it's a pretty extensive program.
Especially if there's only a handful of shops doing it.
Exactly, yeah. They kind of limit the amount of shops that are allowed to be licensed as training programs. So it keeps it very restricted on kind of who comes into the industry there. They do have a leniency program in some states where if you can prove you've had a license for a certain amount of years, they will go ahead and waive those training hours and give you a license.
Okay.
But they're still pretty strict about it, So it's some states you'll find that shops are much cleaner, like in Arkansas and stuff like that. You'll find that people are much more kind of professional about it. Other states like Arizona, man, you'll find that it's not so much, And then states like Washington here, they don't, like if you've filed for a couple of licenses, they don't really do a lot of coming back to reevaluate and check the environment.
Oh, once you're good, you're good?
Once you're kind of in, you can get away with some stuff that's, I think, should be maybe a little bit more looked into, for sure,
Oh, wow. Okay. I guess I hadn't really thought of that. So, no,
yeah,
that's
exactly.
very good to know.
A lot
Thank
of the
you.
states, because you have to pay someone to come look into it, kind of more relies on complaints or filed issues than actually regular checks and things like that.
Since you've tattooed in so many different states, shops, I guess this probably has nothing to do with boards or anything like that. It's just one thing I've kind of noticed how I've noticed that a lot of the shops I've been in will either be like one big open area with several stations set up, but then I've been to a few others that have been like, it'll be more structured like a doctor's office or a dental clinic, something like that, where there's a very definite reception waiting area, but then every artist has a like an office almost.
Yeah, a lot more barriers and everything like that.
Is that just a preferential thing, or are there actual reasons for?
Some of that depends on state code. That yet
wow.
again boils down to state regulations. So, like in Washington, they don't have a regulatory reason to separate bays. As long as there's one bay to where people come into it, and there's an entryway separating reception area from the bays, then you're good to go. Say like in Montana, you actually have to have a physical partitioning barrier around each bay so that you cannot have free walking clients traverse from one bay to the next bay, thus tracking contaminants or other things across the lines. Some people view tattooing as what they call a community health risk. Like in Arkansas, like I was saying, where they regulate very heavily. That sounds
punk as fuck, though.
Yeah. It's a very, very big issue, they say, because someone could get a communicable disease. Other states, they're like, you're an adult, you know what you're doing. If you're going in there, you accept the risks. So they're like, as adults, you get to do whatever you want. So yeah, that really boils down to certain state laws. And then also, yes, preferences. Okay. Some artists, they don't like working out and about with other artists. They feel vulnerable or uncomfortable because when you're with a client, like we talked about in the beginning, it's a dinner and a show. So you're trying to kind of feel comfortable and talk with them while focusing on your work. Well, some artists, we're not always the most social of people. So like being kind of fluently talking around other people, they feel apprehensive. So having a sectioned off area that's like them and their client one-on-one, it's just two friends hanging out, they can be much more comfortable and fluent. I like both of them. You know, sometimes when you have your own bay, it's kind of cool because you can personalize it. There's a lot of fun. But when you have like the open thing, you can get cross conversations going between you, other artists, and your clients. And that helps out because sometimes, man, you're there for 3 or 4 hours. It's hard to keep a good conversation going, you know, especially if your client's not so good at talking because you're just carrying it the whole time and trying to focus and work, and you're like, you can help out here a little bit.
I know we've talked about some random shit while Cam was working on you before, so okay, yeah.
That's what I love about like the shop we work in now, where like you can just kind of walk over, you can start bullshitting with the other clients. I'm a big fan, just kind of go over and strike conversations.
Oh, totally.
It's fun for me, you know, I'm a bit of a chatty Cathy.
No, okay. And I guess I was thinking now, after this, I'm really going to have to look into a couple laws, because I was thinking the two shops specifically that I noticed were like, you know, doctors' offices were, one was in Louisiana, the other was Florida. So I'm...
Oh, they're both much more regulated states for sure.
Okay, so, ooh,
yep.
all right.
Due to the fact they're in older parts of the U.S. and they boast much higher population levels, you will notice that there's much more regulation because communicable diseases tend to be more issue when there's more population. So you'll also notice with state regulations that the less populous states, in a lot of occasions, will have less regulations.
Okay, that makes
But if
sense.
you go into your, like in Washington, you just go to Washington State government website. A lot of times if you go into the licensing state website, that's where you'll find the regulations specific to licensing programs and get the best info on what the state requires.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then so for you personally as an artist, what are some of your aftercare preferences? Once you've wrapped up the client and they've left the shop, how are they supposed to clean it?
You know, for aftercare these days, I use what we call Tagaderm or Second Skin, Saniderm, or Opsite FlexiFix is another name for it. It's an adhesive medical bandage that you leave on for 7 days. On the 7th day, either the evening of the 7th day or the morning of the 8th day, I recommend to take it off in the shower with lots of hot water and soap.
Okay.
And once you remove that bandage and get it cleaned down, you just switch over to a nice moisturizer that you'll use for, I recommend, for the rest of the life of the tattoo, because you can never over moisturize your skin.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I use these days. It tends to be the best because the adhesive bandage left on for 7 days gives your skin a good amount of time to rebound. No one's going to be putting harsh chemicals or cleaners on it, which could create a secondary irritation, which could lead to ink rejection. Some clients, though, are allergic to the adhesive. Very, very few and far in between, I'll let you know, though. Very rarely. So we still use a traditional wet heal for them, you know, which is the saran wrap, washing it 2 to 3 times a day, keeping it moist, which I don't really like because there's a lot of chance for cross-contamination to happen. I don't know how well everybody cleans their bathrooms or how clean their work environment is, so when you're dealing with an open wound, always nice to take an extra precaution. I use the adhesive bandages on myself. I can't rave about them enough. I think it's one of the best ways to heal a tattoo.
Very cool. All right. And then, so, kind of here in closing, so tattooing, that's something that, I'm sorry, you said your apprenticeship, and I am so sorry I haven't been able to keep this straight. That started when you were 16, right?
Yeah, right about 16.
And
correct.
Then, all right. So you've been doing that for dozen years. So if a nuclear bomb hit right now, everything gets wiped out, tattooing was the right career for you.
Oh, of course, yep, 100%. I would never change any of that. I have loved tattooing since I got into it. It has allowed me to live a lifestyle and have freedoms that not many people get overall, so I consider myself very fortunate and thankful for that. I mean, it's kind of, in my mind, a luxury industry, you know? It's it's not a necessity, so it treats me really good, especially as an artist. You know, it has a lot of pluses there. As a job, everything has pros and cons, as we talked about with terrible clients. But if I were to scale it out, if I could go back 1,000 different times and take different choices, I would probably choose tattoo in most all of them.
Hell yeah.
Just because, man, it's pretty awesome. It affords a lot of conveniences.
And I mean, you've gotten to travel so much with it.
Exactly, that's one of the big pluses. You know, I was able to see a lot of the country that most jobs would have never allowed me to do, you know. Couple drawbacks with the traveling. I mean, it doesn't look great on records or like rental things and stuff like that. That's a drawback, but this experience invaluable. I love that. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Awesome. All right. So what advice would you give to the kid who wants to become a tattoo artist, an aspiring tattoo artist?
Draw, keep drawing, and then when you're sick of it, keep drawing some more. Because really, it's a really competitive industry, especially these days with how many people have gotten into it. When I got into it, it wasn't nearly as saturated or competitive. This town I was in, there was only 2 shops in the whole town. Here in Washington and Spokane here, there's dozens of shops, dozens. So really, if you want to get into it, just really be consistent and really just draw a lot. It's not going to pay off at first either. Just remember that you're going to be living on ramen and peanut butter and jelly for a couple years, and that may sound depressing, but once you get past that and you keep up with it, I would, like I told you before, I wouldn't trade it. It definitely pays off. With the people you meet, the experiences you get to have, the places you could go. It's an amazing experience.
There's, I guess a big payoff for a lot of work.
Yeah, exactly. So. That's very true.
All right. Well, hey, thank you so much again. Real quickly, before we go here, is there anyone who might be listening to the program you might want to send a shout out to?
I take all my friends. They're supportive of not only my career and have got tattooed by me, but also the people that I've worked with, especially now with the shop I work with, Living Skin. With also Getty and Cam. It's been awesome experience. They've been very open and accepting, not only of me as a person, but also all of my personal things. And that's been amazing. And especially a huge thank you and shout out to all of my clients. I appreciate and love all of you guys. I couldn't be here without you, wouldn't be doing what I do, or have the life without it. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
Awesome. Well, once again, thank you so much for being on the show today, Lucy.
Thanks for having me. It was a great time.
Lucy, thanks so much for letting me interview you. Lots of valuable info there, a couple funny stories, and she's so down to earth. It was an honor and a privilege. Go ahead and peep her portfolio on Instagram. She's at Black Bee Tattoos. If you're just passing through the Inland Northwest or you live here, I really can't recommend Living Skin Tattoo highly enough. Whether it's Lucy Keogh, Cam West, or Getty Anderson, everyone there is so damn talented, dedicated, and hardworking. This is also the first interview I've recorded with my new Tascam DR40X. I recorded both Lucy and myself through Samson R21 mics. Just for reference, right now I'm recording directly into the PC through my Samson Q2U microphone. Still kind of playing with the Tascam, figuring out how it works, but I'm really digging it so far. It's a fun little toy. That's enough about my setup. Once again, thank you so much, Lucy Keogh. Go follow her on Instagram at Black Bee Tattoos. Follow me at Ex-Girlfriend Tattoo Podcast. I'm Austin Larson. This has been the Ex-Girlfriend Tattoo Podcast.